Welcome back to Summer Racing Quick Flicks. Today in part 2 of how to buy the right headers for your vehicle application, we're going to talk about the different primary tube diameters. In our first video about selecting headers for your vehicle, we had discussed the differences between full-length headers and shorty headers and the performance benefits of each. Today we're going to talk about primary tube sizing and how to go about evaluating what size primary tube is right for your vehicle and engine application. For starters, one thing we have to understand about primary tube sizing is the way it's measured. All primary tubes are measured OD and not ID, and with all exhaust components, we did a video early on about the difference between ID and OD and what components are measured which way. Primary tubes are measured OD, meaning that if you buy like a 1 5/8" primary tube header, it may only have an 1.5 inch inner diameter in reality. So what can get a little confusing here is that if you look at the port dimensions on your head and you come to find that the port dimension on your head is 1.5 inches or whatever it might be, you buy a primary tube that is a little larger than that, you put the header on, you come to find that they're actually the same size as the ports on your head for starters. So they may seal up perfectly or they may be a little larger, whatever it might be in your specific situation. When it comes to the primary tube diameter, we got to look at the way we're using the vehicle though. And if we're looking for extreme high-end RPM use, we're going to look at a larger primary tube header. Whereas in comparison, if we're looking to produce more torque or mid-range power, we're probably going to look more towards a small to mid-range primary diameter header instead. The reason for this is the way that each is going to move the exhaust gases and what the needs of the engine are. There are certain things that when you contact us that we're going to evaluate about your application to determine which is right for your vehicle. We'll look at things like cubic inch displacement, amount of compression, size of camshaft, type of vehicles being placed in, and how the vehicle is mainly going to be used. All of these are going to be factoring greatly on which is right for your specific vehicle. When you go about looking up a set of headers for your vehicle, you're probably going to come to find that there's quite a few different sets that are going to fit your vehicle application correctly. Now there's a lot of footnotes and things like that that are going to affect the fitment, and you're really going to have to dig into the information to determine which is the right fit for your vehicle options a lot of the time. That being said, you're probably also going to notice that there's a lot of different primary tube diameters that are going to be available. And these are there for a reason, because they want to give you the ability to tune for your specific application, meaning that if you have an extremely aggressive engine with a lot of compression, big camshaft, you're going to want that larger primary tube header. Whereas in comparison, if you have a mild engine, a car that's driven mainly on the street, or a truck application where you do a lot of towing and things like that, you're probably going to want that smaller to mid-range tube primary diameter. There is another factor here though, and the other factor is that some headers you're going to notice are extremely more expensive than others. The reason for this is that some header manufacturers, when you get into some of the more higher performance headers, are going to do what's known as a tuned header, which is different from the standard entry-level header. The reason why it's going to be referred to as a tuned header is the fact that all the primary tubes on that header are going to be equal length, meaning every single one is going to have the same length as the next. Tuned headers have great power benefits because of the fact that they scavenge much better than a standard and non-equal length header. The problem with the tuned header is, for starters, is the price. Secondly, is the fitment. You have to add a lot of extra tubing to make the rest of the tubes in that header system as long as the longest one that's necessary. Therefore, they're going to take up more room in the engine compartment and are typically going to be harder to install. So these are probably one of the other things you want to consider when selecting a set of headers. You know, as most of us know, the installation of headers is typically not as straightforward as it seems sometimes. And you start going with some more exotic headers, some headers that have some larger primary tube diameters, equal length tubing at the same time, and you may come to find that you're going to have to make a lot of changes to that vehicle to truly make those headers fit. Make sure you stay tuned for part 3 where we're going to walk you through the whole process of selecting the proper headers for your vehicle.